They see an old man with a limp and a worn jacket, just another relic taking up space in their trendy diner. Navy SEAL Jackson Miles smirks, thinking he owns the room. After all, he's got the tattoo, the team, the reputation. But what he doesn't know, that man is Robert Ellis, Medal of Honor, recipient the mind behind battlefield systems that saved hundreds of SEAL lives. Stick around because when the truth surfaces, so does the fury of a brotherhood betrayed. Justice doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it walks in slow and leaves a legacy that shatters pride. We'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Comment below and subscribe to stay updated. The late afternoon sun slices through the restaurant's windows as Navy SEAL Jackson Miles surveys his domain from his preferred corner table. His fingers drum against the polished surface, each tap an echo of the authority he's grown accustomed to wielding. The dagger through anchor tattoo on his forearm, usually a source of pride, feels like it's burning beneath his rolled sleeve as he watches the elderly man with the prosthetic leg struggling to enjoy his meal in peace. Jackson Miles straightens his shoulders, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth, as he observes the whispers and sideways glances directed at the old veteran. The manager, Thomas, keeps throwing nervous looks in Jackson's direction, seeking approval. After all, Jackson's weekly gatherings with his SEAL team bring considerable business to this establishment. His word has become law here. Sir. Jackson Miles calls out his voice, carrying that practiced tone of false concern. I couldn't help but notice you seem uncomfortable here. He rises from his seat, towering over the elderly man's table. The restaurant falls silent, phones discreetly rising to record what's unfolding. This is a certain caliber of establishment, you understand. The old man's hands shake slightly as he grips his cane, but his eyes meet Jackson's with an unsettling steadiness. There's something in that gaze that makes Jackson's certainty waver for a split second. A ghost of recognition, perhaps. The identical tattoo on the veteran's arm catches the light, but Jackson Miles forces himself to ignore it. I fought for this country, son, the old man says quietly, his voice carrying decades of dignity. Same as you. Jackson Miles laughs, but it sounds hollow, even to his own ears. Fought in what World War II times have changed, old-timer. This isn't your era anymore. He gestures to the manager. Thomas, please escort our guest out. We have standards to maintain. The cane taps against the floor, once, twice, 3 times, each sound like a gavel falling in judgment. The old man rises slowly, his prosthetic leg catching the light. My name is Robert Ellis, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, Marine Corps. And you, son, have forgotten what that tattoo means. A younger woman at a nearby table gasps, her phone steady as she films. Wait. Robert Ellis, the Medal of Honor recipient. Jackson Miles feels the first trickle of cold sweat down his spine as phones throughout the restaurant light up notifications pinging. The hashtag #SealShame appears on someone's screen, accompanied by the video already uploading. Type honor if you believe in respecting all our veterans, scrolls across one of the live streams. His fingers unconsciously trace his own tattoo as Robert Ellis moves past him, head held high, despite his slow, measured steps. The old veteran pauses at the door, looking back with eyes that have seen too much to be truly defeated by this moment. You know, son, Ellis says softly, I've faced worse enemies than fear dressed up in false pride. The question is, have you... As the door closes behind Robert Ellis Jackson, Miles stands frozen, his empire of influence suddenly feeling as fragile as spun glass. His phone buzzes incessantly as the video spreads, and he realizes with growing dread that this isn't just another day of wielding power. This is the beginning of something else entirely. Will his carefully constructed world of authority and respect survive an encounter with true heroism? The answer burns in his gut like acid as the hashtag #SealShame climbs Twitter's trending list, and the ghost of his own reflection in the window looks less like a warrior and more like something else entirely, something he's not ready to name. Have you ever wondered, he thinks, staring at his trembling hands, how quickly a lifetime of respect can evaporate? I earned my trident, fought alongside the best, but today I became something else, something my instructors would spit on. The real question isn't whether I have the right to judge who belongs here. It's whether I still belong in the brotherhood I've just shamed. The dagger through anchor tattoo seems to pulse with each beat of his racing heart, no longer a badge of honor, but a burning brand of shame. Jackson Miles sinks back into his chair, watching as his phone screen fills with notifications, each one a nail in the coffin of his reputation. The real battle, he realizes, hasn't even begun. Officer Jackson Miles stood in the dimly lit base archives, his fingers hovering over dusty files that hadn't seen daylight in decades. The familiar weight of his SEAL Team 6 medallion pressed against his chest, but for the first time in his decorated career, it felt like a burden rather than a badge of honor. His research had started as a simple background check on Robert Ellis, the elderly veteran he'd witnessed being humiliated at Carson's diner just hours ago. But what began as curiosity had evolved into an obsession that made his stomach churn. File after file revealed Ellis's brilliance in SEAL Team Bravo's logistics division, innovative supply chain solutions that had saved countless lives, including a revolutionary medical evacuation system still in use today. "Sir, I found the mission reports you requested," Lieutenant Sarah Chen said, placing a thick folder on his desk. Jackson Miles barely acknowledged her, his eyes fixed on a black and white photograph of a younger Robert Ellis standing proud beside a helicopter loaded with medical supplies. The date stamp read 1975. Vietnam. The ambient hum of fluorescent lights seemed to pulse with his growing unease as he discovered more. Ellis hadn't just been any logistics officer. He'd revolutionized battlefield supply operations. His innovations had reduced casualty rates by 47% during some of the most brutal campaigns in Southeast Asia. The same man who'd been denied service today had once ensured hundreds of SEALs made it home alive. Jackson Miles's hands trembled as he opened his laptop, accessing the current veterans support database. The statistics glared back at him, thousands of technical and support veterans forgotten by the very system they'd helped build. His own bias struck him like a physical blow. He'd always celebrated the combat veterans, the trigger pullers, while overlooking those who'd kept them alive. Have you ever questioned everything you thought you knew? Type "wake up" if this revelation hits close to home. The SEAL tattoo on his forearm seemed to burn as he remembered his own words at the diner. Real heroes fight on the front lines. The arrogance of that statement now made him nauseous. Studies from the Veterans Affairs Department flashed across his screen. Support personnel experiencing discrimination rates 300% higher than combat veterans, their contributions systematically diminished by the very warriors they'd protected. His phone buzzed, another news alert about the diner incident. But now, reading the comments calling him a disgrace to the uniform, Jackson Miles felt something beyond mere shame. He recognized a deeper systemic problem, the military's unspoken hierarchy of honor, where trigger pullers stood above all others. The medallion felt heavier with each passing minute. He'd earned it through combat, yes, but how many unseen hands like Ellis's had made his victories possible? The research painted a damning picture: decades of institutional bias, celebrated warriors unconsciously perpetuating a culture that valued visible scars over invisible contributions. "Commander," Lieutenant Chen's voice interrupted his spiral. "The base commander wants to know if you'll be speaking at tomorrow's medal ceremony." Jackson Miles stared at his reflection in the computer screen, barely recognizing the man looking back. The ceremony, where he'd planned to celebrate another combat victory. But now, his fingers traced old mission reports, medical supplies, arriving exactly when needed, innovative packaging that prevented infection in field conditions, evacuation protocols that had become military doctrine. all bearing Robert Ellis's signature, all saving lives without ever firing a shot. The final piece of research landed like a hammer blow. Ellis had lost his leg not in combat, but while testing a new medical evacuation system. He'd sacrificed himself to perfect the very protocols that would later save Jackson Miles's own team during a botched mission in Kandahar. "Sir," Chen prompted again. But Jackson Miles could only stare at his medallion, understanding finally hitting him with devastating clarity. He wasn't just part of the problem, he was its perfect embodiment, a decorated warrior who'd unknowingly perpetuated the very prejudices that dishonored the foundation of military excellence. "Share this post if you've ever discovered you were part of the problem you thought you were fighting." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Jackson Miles began composing an email to base command. His career, his reputation, everything he'd built his identity around. It all looked different now. The question wasn't whether he'd speak at tomorrow's ceremony, but whether he could live with himself if he didn't use that platform to tell the truth about Robert Ellis and thousands like him. The weight of his medallion reminded him of every life saved by unseen heroes. Tomorrow would change everything. But tonight, in the quiet of the archives, Jackson Miles finally understood the true cost of honor's hierarchy. Navy SEAL Jackson Miles straightens his spine, hyper-aware of every eye in the restaurant, tracking his movement. The security camera's red light blinks steadily in his peripheral vision, an electronic witness to what's about to unfold. His phone vibrates again. Another notification, another share, another judgment of his earlier behavior spreading across social media like wildfire. The metallic taste of fear coats his tongue as he watches the view count climb on the video. 3,000. 5,000. 10,000. His hands, steady in combat zones across the globe, now tremble slightly as he refreshes the screen. The hashtag #DonterVeteransPride burns into his vision, a digital brand of shame. "Sir, perhaps we should discuss this privately," a voice calls out, his manager Kevin suddenly appearing beside him with forced calm. But Jackson Miles can hear the underlying panic. The restaurant's reputation is imploding in real time, and he knows he's the cause. The scraping of chairs against tile continues, a discordant symphony of witnesses positioning themselves for a better view. Jackson Miles feels sweat beading on his forehead as he catches fragments of whispered conversations. "That's him. The one who can't believe a SEAL would..." His SEAL tattoo seems to burn on his exposed forearm, now no longer a mark of pride, but an accusation. Robert Ellis still sits at his table, dignity intact, despite everything, those knowing eyes never leaving Jackson Miles's face. The recognition there cuts deeper than any knife, the understanding between veterans that transcends age, era, or circumstance. The very brotherhood Jackson Miles had betrayed. His phone buzzes again. CNN has picked up the story. Local veterans groups are organizing a protest. His commander has left 3 messages. The carefully constructed walls of his life are crumbling with each passing minute, each new share, each angry comment. "Look at his face. Such disgrace to the uniform." The words float across the restaurant from a diner's phone, his own voice played back to him, twisted with contempt. Jackson Miles flinches, remembering the arrogance in his tone just hours ago. His fingers instinctively trace the SEAL insignia pinned to his chest, his anchor to identity now feeling as heavy as an actual anchor dragging him down. The viral tsunami builds. 20,000 views. 30,000. A retired admiral has commented, "This is not what we teach our SEALs." Jackson Miles's chest tightens. He'd served under that admiral, earned his respect through blood and grit. Now, with one moment of prejudice captured forever, that respect evaporates like morning dew under a harsh sun. Robert Ellis slowly stands his movements, deliberate, controlled. Jackson Miles watches transfixed as the elderly veteran straightens his own service pins with weathered hands. The gap between them seems to stretch infinitely, not just physical space, but years' wars, and most importantly, honor. Have you ever witnessed your own fall from grace-type honor lost? If you've seen pride become shame? The security footage plays on multiple phones now, a chorus of his own voice echoing back at him. His words sound alien, unrecognizable. Your kind of veteran doesn't belong here. The irony crushes him. He'd become what he'd sworn to fight against: a bully, a bigot, an enemy of the very values he'd bled to defend. Jackson Miles stares at his reflection in the restaurant's window, barely recognizing himself. His phone continues its relentless vibration. CNN wants a statement, veteran groups demand accountability, social media screams for justice. The hashtag #FortressVeteransPride has evolved into Tortu Miles Falls, trending nationwide. The weight of his actions settles over him like a heavy cloak as he watches Robert Ellis gather his belongings with quiet dignity. The sound of his own rapid breathing seems to fill the entire restaurant, drowning out everything except the incessant clicking of phones, capturing his downfall. His entire career, his identity, his future, all balanced on the knife edge of the next few moments. Jackson Miles feels the eyes of 2 generations of veterans upon him. Those present in the restaurant, and those watching through countless screens across the country. His carefully constructed world isn't just crumbling. It's being demolished in high-definition shared, and reshared his shame, becoming a viral lesson in what happens when you betray your own. Former Navy SEAL Jackson Miles watched the transformation sweep across Oak Ridge Diner like a tactical wave. His commanding voice, honed through years of service, carried the weight of purpose as he stood beside Robert Ellis. The elderly veteran's eyes glistened with unshed tears, his weathered hands trembling slightly as Jackson's words filled the space. "This man," Jackson declared, rolling up his sleeve to reveal the distinctive SEAL tattoo, "carries the same mark I do, a mark earned through blood, sweat, and sacrifice." He turned his piercing gaze to the manager, whose face had drained of all color. The manager's hands fidgeted with his tie, a nervous tell that spoke volumes about his growing realization. Phones emerged from pockets like flowers blooming after rain, their camera clicks creating a digital symphony that would soon echo across the nation. The first video uploaded carried the hashtag #Aren'tVeterans and within minutes it began its viral journey across social media platforms. A retired Marine colonel 2 tables over stood up, then a former Army Ranger by the window. Like dominoes falling in perfect sequence, veterans throughout the restaurant rose to their feet. Each one rolled up their sleeve or pulled down their collar, revealing their own marks of service. The manager's eyes darted between them, his previous arrogance crumbling under the weight of collective honor. Jackson's tattoo, once a personal reminder of his service, transformed into something greater before his eyes. It became a beacon, a symbol that transcended individual experience. His phone buzzed continuously as the video spread, notifications flooding in from SEALs across the country. They were sharing their own stories, their own encounters with invisible veterans. Those who, like Robert, had faced discrimination because they didn't fit someone's narrow image of military service. Sir Jackson addressed the manager, his voice carrying the calm authority that had guided teams through the world's most dangerous waters. "Your policy of looking the part ends today. Every veteran's service matters regardless of their age, appearance, or current circumstances." The manager's attempt at damage control came too late. Local news vans were already pulling into the parking lot, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like modern totems. Inside, veterans continued to share their stories, creating an impromptu gathering that felt more like a long overdue reunion than a protest. A young waitress approached Jackson, her eyes bright with purpose. "My grandfather was a Vietnam vet." She shared, her voice steady despite her emotion. "He faced the same thing. I quit." She removed her apron and placed it on the counter with quiet dignity. By nightfall, the video had reached millions. Navy SEALs from San Diego to Virginia Beach were conducting their own stand-ups at local establishments, each one carrying the message forward like a sacred mission. The hashtag, #VeteranStrong, trended nationwide, accompanied by thousands of photos showing veterans' tattoos and sharing their stories of invisible service. Jackson remained at the diner until closing time, watching as the community he'd helped forge grew stronger with each passing hour. His phone contained hundreds of messages from fellow SEALs, each one pledging support and sharing their own plans to address discrimination in their communities. Type "honor" in the comments if you believe every veteran deserves respect regardless of their appearance. Robert Ellis, who had started the day as a target of discrimination, ended it as a symbol of dignity and resilience. The elderly veteran's quiet strength had catalyzed a movement that would ripple through veteran communities across America. Jackson's stand hadn't just changed one restaurant's policy. It had ignited a national conversation about recognition, respect, and the true face of military service. As the last customer left the diner, Jackson looked at his tattoo, the same mark that had sparked this transformation. It no longer felt like just a symbol of his past service. It had become a bridge between generations of veterans, a reminder that honor knows no age and courage wears many faces. Share this video to help us reach every veteran who's ever felt invisible. Together, we stand stronger. From the sidewalk, Navy SEAL Jackson Miles watches the transformed restaurant through newly humbled eyes. The establishment where just 24 hours ago his arrogance had caused such pain now buzzes with the warm symphony of veterans sharing stories. His fingers trace the edges of his SEAL tattoo, no longer a badge of superiority but a reminder of the true meaning of service. The clink of glasses and bursts of laughter filter through the windows, each sound striking him like a physical blow. Inside, Robert Ellis sits at the head table, his prosthetic leg visible beneath his pressed khakis. Jackson's throat tightens as he remembers how he'd sneered at that same leg yesterday, how he'd used his own service to diminish another warrior's sacrifice. "Some SEAL you are," he whispers to his reflection in the window. "Thought your decade of service made you better than him, made you better than everyone." His hand clenches involuntarily, muscle memory, reaching for the arrogance that had been his shield for so long. The viral video of his behavior plays on a mounted TV inside. His younger self, puffed up with false pride, demanding preferential treatment, mocking Robert's age and injury. The hashtag, #StandTogether, scrolls beneath it, now a movement bigger than his mistake. Each replay drives home the ultimate truth: his service was meant to protect others, not elevate himself. Taking a deep breath, Jackson straightens his spine and pushes open the door. The conversations pause as heads turn. Robert Ellis meets his gaze across the room, and Jackson forces himself to hold that steady look to face the wisdom and dignity he'd failed to see before. "Mr. Ellis." Jackson's voice carries in the sudden quiet. "Yesterday I dishonored everything this uniform stands for. I forgot that service isn't about personal glory. It's about protecting the dignity of every American, especially those who sacrificed before us." The prosthetic leg catches the light as Robert stands using his cane for balance. Jackson's instinct to rush forward and help wars with his new understanding of respect. He stays rooted, letting Robert choose the moment. "You know, son," Robert says, his voice carrying decades of hard-earned wisdom, "true strength isn't in standing above others. It's in standing beside them." The words hit Jackson like a physical blow, shattering the last remnants of his protective shell. His eyes burn as Robert extends his hand. Not in judgment, but in brotherhood. "Share this moment." The event organizer calls out, phone raised. Show the world what real service looks like. Stand together. As Jackson clasps Robert's hand, their matching tattoos align. Different eras, same heart of service. The applause that follows isn't for him, Jackson realizes. It's for this moment of truth that every veteran's story deserves honor, that true warriors lift each other up. Type honor in the comments if you believe in standing together. The organizer encourages the filming crowd. Let's make this message of respect go viral. Jackson's grip on Robert's hand tightens slightly. Your generation taught mine how to fight, he says, voice rough with emotion. Today you taught me how to serve. The setting sun streams through the windows, catching the medals on Robert's jacket and the tears in Jackson's eyes. In this light, there are no divisions, no hierarchies of service, only warriors standing together as they always should have. Drop a heart emoji if this transformation touched you. Every share helps spread the message that true service knows no ranks in respect. Stand together.